Welcome to the Gallant Few, the Rangers podcast, who are proudly sponsored by the Insurance Practice. The team at the Insurance Practice specialise in family protection and life insurance, and who better to look after you and your loved ones than fellow Rangers fans. Check out the website at www.theinsurancepractice.co.uk or contact the Gallant Few for more information. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Gallant Few podcast. My name's Colin MacDuff and today I'm delighted to be joined by Regional Coordinator for Youth Development of New York City Football Club, Calum Sinclair. Calum, first of all, happy Thanksgiving and thanks for coming on the podcast and a big day in America.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a pleasure to be on it. Really enjoyed the nature of your podcast, so it's good to talk Rangers, and it's a day off here as well, so what better way to spend it.
Happy days. Before we get into it, you'll notice, listeners, although he works in New York, he's not got a Brooklyn accent or anything. Calum, are you enjoying life in America? And on the other side of that, are you missing Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the Rangers thing, everything's been kind of equalised, I think, across, no fans allowed, so everybody's kind of viewing it the same way and following it in the same way, so this has been quite a unique year, but usually, yeah, you miss it, you miss going to Ibrox, you miss, certainly, seeing the games live and what have you, but no, I think the way Rangers have been doing things with their games and all the coverage they've put together has been excellent, so, you can't really complain. And as for living here, it's great for the most part anyway. It's been a bit turbulent the past year or so, or past 4 years it has of. But yeah, overall it's brilliant. You get the early games to watch Rangers. You kick off your day in the right way with a win this season, and then it sets you up for the rest of your weekend. So I can't complain too much.
Happy days. If Rangers keep up this form, then you'll have a spring your step most days. So we're going to go on to talk about your specialty, I hope, youth development for both your own club and Rangers, and the kind of differences in youth development in America and Scotland. But before we get into all that, tell the listeners a bit about your background. I know, before we come to you were at Queen's Park for a few years, but has this always been something you wanted to do in terms of the youth development side, or was it coaching you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've seen it, I remember having a conversation with my guidance counsellor in high school about career choices at 11 years old, and they said, what do you want to be? So me being me at 11, wanted to be a footballer, and it was like, right, okay, what next? So the next stage was always getting into coaching, and then after that, PE teacher. So the way I view it is I'm kind of on plan B, if you like, of my life path. So it's been very good to me, and I think obviously just anything being around the game is really all that I've wanted to do, basically. So I'm privileged to be in the position I am, and it's always a joy to kind of pass on that enthusiasm to kids of all ages and backgrounds and what have you. But yeah, like you alluded to, I'd spent time at Queen's Park as a coach, and getting into that, I'd played with the academy growing up from U15s right the way up to the U19 level, and then ended up starting uni, and that kind of took over, and Queen's Park, or playing for Queen's Park, came to an end. And I was really lucky enough that as part of my university course I had to do a little bit of an internship somewhere, get some hands-on experience. So I went back to the club, and they were kind enough to offer me a little internship that kind of just grew and grew and grew into becoming part of the coaching staff there with the academy guys, and doing some of the community work as well in and around the sort of Mount Florida area. So the club's been great to me, and obviously the historic club within Scotland as well. So that was a big part of my kind of growing up around soccer or football. Was in and around those in and around that club, and with special mention, I think, to David McCallum. I think our listeners will probably be more familiar with David being in the academy, working with the B teams and the U18s and U20s, or whatever kind of form they come with. And he was actually the head of youth football there when I was starting out as a coach. And he's a fantastic influence on me as well. So I've been really privileged to work with him from such a young age.
Is there anything in particular David McCallum does so different, or does he have like unique ideas, or is he just like really, does he just enable coaches? What makes him stand out in terms of being a great role model for coaches?
So for me, anyway, I don't know if I can speak for every coach that's worked with him, but certainly for me as a young coach, he was very deliberate in his feedback with me, and he has a very clear picture of what it should look like on the field, what it should look like off the field, and not just in terms of football and development, but also in terms of people, how they develop off the field, in their own person as well. He was really good with me in that, and I'm sure the boys are reaping the benefits from that. Certainly the guys that are getting up towards training with the first team, I can only imagine that they've got the personality as well as obviously the playing ability as well. And David does a really good job with that, with staff, with players of all ages. I worked with the U13s at the time with him as the head of youth, and he played a real big part in sort of paying attention to what was going on, not just with the players but also with the coaches and how they were getting on. And we were lucky that we had quite a few young coaches involved with the club in the academy back then, and he always made time to go over that with us and make sure that we were part of it as well, but also that they were getting the most out of the kids at the same time. But yeah, he's a fantastic guy, somebody I really count on as a big influence in my career for sure.
Brilliant, good to hear such high praise of somebody in the Rangers setup anyway. So at the time, how did the Queen's Park setup how did that compare to other teams in Scotland and in particular Rangers? The reason I ask is I don't know if it's just because I'm from the south side of Glasgow, but you used to always hear about the best footballers at your school. They'll be on trials with Queen's Park, picked up all that kind of stuff. I don't need to repeat the fairy tale of Andy Robertson playing for Queen's Park 5 years ago. I'm sure that's that line will go well where that will follow him wherever he goes. How did they compare when you were there, in your eyes?
So for me, it came in two parts. As a player, we were playing in what was then, I guess, the SFL, the Scottish Football League, where we would play teams that were outside the Premier League, and it would be still a high quality of player at that age. Play teams like Stirling, even East Stirling as well. I remember they had the boy actually I grew up with that ended up playing pro for Livingston, Josh Mullen. I can't remember if he's still there now, but he was always in there. We grew up together playing football, and that's the kind of level of play you're talking about that was playing beneath the Premier League level at that time. So you're going back to like 2007 time. The second part of that was when it shifted, when I started working as a coach with Queen's Park. They moved into some kind of elite group. I can't remember the kind of iteration of it at the time, but it was some kind of elite group where they were playing more regularly against your teams like Rangers, Celtic, St Mirren, Hearts, all the kind of Hibs top level academies at the time. And to be honest, obviously Andy Robertson, for all that he had a fantastic career, he is very much an outlier, but that came from being given the opportunity at a young age, and players getting that opportunity to go up and test themselves at first team level from 16, 17, 18 years old. Shankland is another one that's at Dundee United, who came up through Queen's Park's academy as well. So they do a really good job in fostering the right people as well. And then there's two Scottish internationalists that have come up from that kind of pathway. So they do, talent-wise, definitely compare to some of the best around. Obviously, Rangers are looking more internationally now at their players as well, which is great. But at the same time, it raises the level for the kids in Scotland as well to push on. But certainly Queen's Park were, they did not look at a place at that level. They were really up there at the time, and they still are, from what I understand.
I don't want to really go over spilled milk for the listeners, but it's well documented at the time that a big regret for when Rangers went into administration in 2012 that a lot of a lot of fans, myself included, thought this was the chance to get the youth set up right. And it's like, I'm not breaking any ground here when I say that they didn't really focus on that at all. But for what you seen when you were even at like under 13 level, did you see much was it non-existent at that time, the Rangers set up?
It's different. I think the approach to players now is radically different, and they look more at technique, they look more at decisions, mental preparation, all these kind of things. And I think that's now because they've had more of a grasp on how to kind of measure it or analyse it or get a perception of it. Whereas back, even 10 years ago, even probably 5-6 years ago, it was a lot different. It was maybe just based on the biggest kids, the strongest kids, the guys that can smash the ball in from 30 yards, and they have their merits. It's not to say that they can't be a good player just because they're so physically dominant. But I think there was more of an emphasis placed on that as the kids were coming through, and ultimately like a lot of talent might have been lost. And I think if you see the profile of the players that are coming through now from the academy, guys like Kai Kennedy, Stephen Kelly, even Dapo, Mabudi, these are guys that maybe aren't 6'2", dominant physically. They're more technical and mental based. And I think maybe that shift has come with a playing style that now matches what the academy are producing as well. Because it's no secret the success the academy have had over the past 2-3 years, certainly at senior academy level. And I think that's come from that shift in sort of player ID base, not taking the big kids all the time, maybe looking at the kids that can keep the ball or move it or make good decisions in different areas. So I think we're obviously seeing the benefit from that now more than we did back then, because we're getting smarter footballers as opposed to physical footballers.
Yeah, I think that's been something that the Rangers footballing department, like for Ross Wilson all the way down to like the coaches like Kevin Thompson, they've spoke about having a similar culture and a similar identity to the first team. And I suppose in theory, if you're playing the same way with the same mentality at under 19 then under 21 level, it should help the transition a bit more in the first team level. Just sticking with the Rangers Academy while we're on that there. Do you have much exposure? Do you know, have you seen how well they're doing? And do you think there's any realistic way that we can see maybe one or two players breaking into the first team each year with the current setup?
The last time I was back in Scotland was 2018, and actually I messaged David McCallum to see if I could come in and just even see for a session, and it's more of a hope than anything. And he was really good. He invited me in. We saw, I think at the time was the U16 or U17s that were playing, and like Dapo, for example, was in that cohort, and you could see already the demands, not so much that the coaches play. I think everybody has a perception of the coaches being like the ones that are hammering players, you need to do this, you need to do that, but it was actually pretty much player led, that they were setting the standards for themselves and being not happy with what they were doing or pushing each other to do better. And I think with that mentality, certainly stepping into what I would perceive anyway, that Rangers dressing room with the kind of guys they've got in there, the demands that Tavernier might set, guys like Defoe, these are big personalities that are going to demand a lot. And I think seeing them demand so much of each other back then, and that was 2 years ago, is something that will probably shape them. And that comes back to that kind of mental element that, for all they're good players and they could probably, beat teams fairly handily, it was that desire in training to be even pushing themselves to that next level or setting the standard that bit higher. But for sure, and again, David came on during all this COVID podcast, video meetings, all that kind of stuff. David came on and hosted a little seminar with the guys at NYCFC, just talking about the youth development pathways, some of the ways they train and practice and ultimately try and develop players for the first team. And I think you can see his enthusiasm talking about the squad that we had then. I think it's coming, the optimism is so high for a lot of players to come through, and I think you're seeing that earlier with young Patterson at right back now, very much becoming Tavernier's deputy, and unfortunately he's not going to play against Falkirk, but he's one that's ready stepping in. You've got other guys, I'm sure, that will be in that. I know the young lad Mayo's been in that conversation as well, and Kennedy, again, off the field. I don't know what the situation was there, but he was one that certainly has the talent to be in that environment. And I think there's probably more to come down that line, judging by the enthusiasm that the coaches certainly have. And I'm sure Kevin Thompson's very public in his kind of praise of the kids there as well. So I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be more progression from the academy into the first team.
Yeah, I think everybody has had they do have that kind of sense of pride. Like there's 1 year old when the likes of Nathan Patterson come through, and you even see them on the bench, and you're right, it is a pity they won't be able to play against Falkirk. That would have been an ideal game for them and to rest having there. But I think as Rangers fans, everybody wants to. Fans across the world, I'm sure for their own club, everybody wants to see the youth talent coming through. So here's hoping there's more to follow in Nathan Patterson. So after 3 years at Queen's Park, talk us through, how did it come about swapping Mount Florida for the United States of America, mate? That's a move and a half.
Yeah, to be honest, I was finishing up my university, so I was doing a master's degree at Stirling, and honestly, it was intense, and I just thought I need a break from this. So I just ended up really searching for positions abroad, something else to try my hand at, because I never really had the idea of, right, let's go to America and let's do that for however many years. It was more just, I want to try my hand at this. Let's see if I can also get paid for doing something I like, coaching. It's tough to make a living in Scotland as a coach, as I'm sure a lot of guys will be able to testify to. But I ended up, it was just one of those ones that you roll the dice on. They ended up calling me, come down to, I think it was a place in England, Stevenage or something like that, and they brought down all these guys to do like an assessment centre for coaches, and then they were giving us a bit about the role, and I'm like, sounds actually not bad. They got to New Jersey, and I couldn't point to New Jersey on a map at the time. I had no idea where it was, but you ended up coming out, and spent, must have been about 5 years or something there, and it was great. The people that I met there, I've got friends for life basically, and from just by meeting them for that time, and still pretty close to a lot of the guys there. And obviously the lifestyle, you come out here, it's sport on 24/7 all the time. It's this time of year usually is the best time of year because they've got 4 sports going on all at one time and everything's going on. But no, it's been great. It was just one of these that you roll the dice and see what happens. And here I am, still rolling the dice 6 years later. But no, I would recommend it to anyone that's maybe listening, maybe younger, not sure what they want to do. You can find a way to go to a different environment or whatever. Test it out, see how you like it. But no, I couldn't speak more highly about the place.
So when you first moved to America, was there such a stark difference in terms of mentality towards like sports in general, but more in particular youth development? Is it? I mean, I think we only see the really like high profile Super Bowls or like the MLS. I mean, I don't think there's too many listeners in the Gallant few that know the ins and outs of the youth development in America. But
yeah,
is it night and day compared to Scotland?
It's certainly different. It's certainly there's a lot of emphasis placed on sport here, which is great for kids because they're never at a loose end basically. But also on the other side, you could argue that they're a little bit overscheduled. So I've had kids, and it's not a slight on them by any stretch, but they either become at football practice, soccer practice, and then they go, right, I need to leave after an hour because I've got lacrosse practice. Lacrosse is a sport you play with a stick, and it's bizarre. But they end up doing that, or they're running late from a hockey match, so they're going to arrive right on kickoff for a game, and it's crazy, and it's crazy that that's the level of intensity these kids have. And I know it's different in Scotland, where it's very, much a singular focus that you're playing football or maybe rugby. But certainly, if you're going to football, you're going to football, and that's it. And you need to miss, birthdays, christenings, all these kind of things you need to miss because you're going to football, and that's that. Or you miss football because you're going to the family event. There's no kind of halfway house. Whereas here it's very much, kids on a Saturday, and I don't know how the parents do it, but they do. They take them from all over, and it's no small drive. It's like 45 minutes in a car from here to here. So, I mean, it's crazy, but the passion for any kind of sport here is through the roof. It's unbelievable, and the way people get behind even high school football or high school American football on a Friday night. The communities are out there watching it. It's a big deal, and I think going back, you probably played football at school as well, and it's like you were lucky if you had a man and a dog stop to watch what was going on. Some of the people didn't even want to be there. Never mind have people watching. So the passion is there. But it's also intense from a young level, where I've coached little kids at 4 years old, and the same conversation as a kid at 4, the parents having with me about scholarships, and you're like, whoa, slow, you need to slow down. Like, it's into college or university here, it's an expensive business, so any sort of discount you can get on it is welcome. So it's always in the back of the mind of parents straight away, which can cause its own problems in the short term or long term, but definitely the passion and the intensity is there for sure.
So your current role at New York City, talk us through that, and that's how did you go from USA Sports Group to that? Was that a kind of linked move? Because that's quite a, for what we can see over here, a very high profile club at the moment in the States.
Yeah. So just to give you a bit of context, USA Sport Group was like a private organisation. So I don't know how many of those are in existence in Scotland, but they're a private sort of sports organisation, and they had a sports section and a soccer section. And I had a big part in the soccer section, just gradually going from coaching to different administrative roles, and ultimately ended up being part of the sort of football education team there, sort of dealing with the coaches, helping them develop to the best of my ability that I could help them. So, that kind of stood me in good stead, and ultimately ended up getting married, spending more time further away from that job. So, living more in New York than New Jersey. So you end up kind of looking for work closer to home, and it just so happened, obviously, that NYCFC had been around since, well, they were founded in 2013, but playing games since 2015. So it ended up they're obviously growing and expanding at quite a ferocious rate at the moment. So the opportunity came up to go in and coach with them, just working in their sort of community pool of coaches, and similar, I guess, to what maybe the Scottish Football Association do with sending coaches out to do, camps, clinics, whatever. So it's similar in that role, and eventually they said, about a month into the job, we've got an internship position opening if you want to, we think it'd be a good fit, and if you want to have a go at it. So applied, got the position, and was working with the guys in the youth programs department, which I guess would equate to like a community program at Rangers, or a development, whatever it is, a youth development officer kind of role, which is the role I'm currently in. So it's just almost like landing on your feet. Sometimes you kind of just get in the right place at the right time, and then opportunities kind of come up. But yeah, I mean, it's not without hard work and sacrifices. I'm sure my wife will be quick to tell you. But yeah, no, it's been a fantastic role. It's grown. It's probably grown quicker than we can actually keep up with at times. Just such as the scale of the job in NYC. But no, it's been fantastic. It's actually celebrated my 2-year working anniversary there recently. So it's been great. I really can't fault the club. Certainly in my experience. So yeah, it's been fantastic to develop in that capacity.
2 years in the job, you must be doing something right at least then, mate. So that's so well played. So just sticking with I suppose it'll be hard to gauge with NYCFC because they're so new. It'll be hard to kind of gauge like kind of prolonged success of players that they have coming through. But I'm going to talk about how good the American clubs and the leagues are at bringing players through. Two clubs in particular we want to talk about: Orange County SC and Oklahoma. I'll do that again. Oklahoma Energy FC. So two clubs who are now partnered with Rangers, both playing in the USL Championship. Calum, I think Orange County has been a bit more documented than OEFC, just because we've had that partnership a bit longer. But how much can you tell us about how beneficial to both sides these partnerships will be?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously from Rangers' perspective, they're going to be growing their profile within the States just by being out in that direction. And obviously there's a massive fan following already from expats like myself that will come watch the games and supporters clubs in and around whatever cities. But for sure, the benefit for them is going to be getting the opportunity to send players out on loan, as we've seen already, but also building a presence within sort of big areas that are maybe slightly untapped for anything outside of the MLS or anything outside of the English Premier League or even Spanish. So I think it's a good opportunity for Rangers to corner the market there. Obviously Manchester City, from my own personal experience, partnering with NYCFC and really launching that as well. They've seen a benefit in players moving to Manchester and then ultimately being sold. I think the best example is Jack Harrison. So if Rangers are looking for their own Jack Harrison, I know the young goalkeeper moved over from Orange County as well. So that's kind of the opportunity that the players have coming the other way. And I think if you look at the MLS teams, and I know they're the next level up, but if you look at American players now, that American team that's got all the young talented players in it at the moment have all largely been from American-based clubs that have brought them through with good coaching, with the right environment, the right enthusiasm and passion for the game, and ultimately you look like guys like Gio Reyna came up through NYCFC, now playing at Dortmund. So if Rangers can tap into that market, as a lot of clubs I think now are recognising as a largely untapped player pool, I think that can only be a good thing. The size of the country is massive. The enthusiasm for soccer is picking up. They've got the World Cup coming up here in 6 years. So, I think there's going to be a lot bigger emphasis on soccer and football in general here. And I think that's going to raise the bar. If we can benefit from that on the playing field, even better. But certainly the benefits are mutual as well. Obviously, Rangers are doing a lot around their international programme, which is great, and a big shout out to the guys there. The guy I met closely, actually, Ian Greer, who works in that department, is doing wonders there. Gary Gibson as well. These are all guys that are working really hard to expand that presence in all over the world, but certainly in North America, they've been doing a great job so far of that.
No, I think you're right in what you said. Obviously, there's the obvious footballing advantage. I didn't expect to see anybody coming for Orange County for maybe a couple of years. So when Aaron Cervantes came over this year, 18 years old, that's, I'm not going to say he's going to work out. Every signing's a gamble, whether it's a youth prospect or an established player. But it's good to see that we're starting to, that's starting to come to fruition in terms of on the footballing sense. But I think with a club like Rangers, already an international brand, but to have these connections in America, we've got a connection in India and Australia now as well. We're starting to pop up here and there. I think with the footballing sense, it's just very, very clever branding and marketing. That's added benefits. For Orange County SC, this year we had Cammy Palmer, Danny Finlayson and Matty Shields all feature at some point on loan for them. Kind of mixed success. I think the most successful was Cammy Palmer. He seemed to have a decent run, but the other two will maybe struggling to settle, and during a pandemic as well. I'm sure everybody can can appreciate it is it's a tough move at the best of times to go the other side of the world, never mind when you're 18, 19. But I think the big question a lot of fans have is what is this level? So for me personally, I don't really know if this is the equivalent of Scottish Championship, or if this may be too big a jump to them. Is this, are these boys going to be out of their depth? What can you say about the kind of USL Championship level?
I mean, it's definitely competitive. It's obviously like a semi-pro, and it doesn't quite dovetail with the MLS, certainly, but the level is still high, especially with guys that maybe couldn't make it in the college game here, which is obviously a big focus. It's an easy transition for them to go straight into, they've got the talent, they maybe might not have the academic, success that they need to stay in the college game and ultimately move on from there. So it's good that you'll get a lot of talented players move directly into that league and make it as competitive as possible. So in that regard, they're not going to be in a place that they're going to coast it. They're not going to be there where it's like, I'm out in California, this is great, I turn up, I play football, and this is easy, it's a stroll, all that kind of thing. They're going to have to work hard because, one thing that, American players have always been kind of feted for, if you like, is just their work rate, their dedication, their athleticism. So that's going to count for something, and especially with players now becoming smarter, becoming more technical, becoming influenced from coaches all over the place, they're going to have a little bit more game knowledge now as well. So they're not going to be coming in necessarily as like, the messiah from Europe that understands and is way ahead. They're going to come in and it's going to be a test for them. And, the different environment, like you said, not just on the field, but settling into a new lifestyle, and it has its benefits, being foreign in the US. It definitely has some benefits, but that has to be traded off with, staying dedicated to what you're there for, looking longer term at returning to Rangers and how that's going to pan out. But it's going to be a challenge for them, and it's something that maybe the guys that stay in Scotland might not have, because if they go on loan to, wherever the Championship, the League One or League Two or whatever, they're still within their comfort zone to a certain extent. That they're training with Rangers every 2 or 3 days. That they're still, living in their environment, still with their mates around them. So I think as a whole, when you're talking about that personal development again, these are things that you can really only get when you move abroad and you're on your own, and you have to fend for yourself and develop yourself and work the same way, like nobody's watching. You have to be on top of yourself as much as anything. So I think you'll find when they come back, they're a more mature person than maybe some people might not estimate. And again, moving into an environment where it's your job to play football and be competitive and win games, these are kind of things that will help support that on a bigger basis than just maybe going out on loan to, whatever Championship team you might want to pick out, so there's a trade-off there.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I'd like to think it's just we're not going to just leave it there and have those 3 players when out on loan come back. I'd like to see a kind of a rotation every year, whoever's most equipped to maybe handle the mental pressure and the footballing pressure as well can maybe go over. And obviously it'd have to benefit Orange County and OEFC as well. Surely the guys at Rangers must be thinking, can they drink until you're 21 in America, send the 18-year-olds over?
Smart move.
Smart move. Yeah. So after, was that 6 years in America you've had now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of time working with all age groups. In terms of youth prospects coming through in Scotland compared to America, do you think is there anything glaringly obvious? Like, I know we made a joke about the drinking there, but is there that much of a different culture in players making step up from under 21 to professional? You look at the Rangers teams who are, they're doing very well in Europe, and against, I think Rangers, every age group is playing a year above, so the under 16s are competing at under 18 level and so on. And you look at the Scotland youth setups as well, we seem to have very competitive teams and very promising teams right up until under 21 level. But maybe with the exception of one or two, like Billy Gilmore's the big one right now. We don't tend to get very many young prospects going into the top level where they're kind of tipped to be. Is that maybe a pressure we put on the players? Is that kind of society and the media, or is there something that we're just missing over here?
I mean, it's a good point, and it's always a big talking point, I think, with youth players here. Certainly, looking at NYCFC's first team, we're very fortunate that we've got 5 homegrown players, they call them, that have come up from our academy into the first team. And I think one of the big things I've noticed with those 5 in particular is their humility when they're around the place. And I know they need to be confident, to play at Rangers, 50,000 people and the pressure and all that. They need to have a little bit of cockiness, arrogance. But I think, noticing when these guys have the sort of wherewithal to think, right, when do I need to be that guy versus in and around the locker room or whatever, they're very humble guys, they're very down to earth, and I think they kind of appreciate the position they're in. And I think it comes with the spotlight maybe not being on them as much, because the 18, 19, 20-year-olds in America that get the spotlight on them for athletics are usually the NFL players, the basketball players, the high-profile sports. So with soccer not being quite at that level here yet, I think it's almost a benefit to these guys that want to kick on professionally, that they've got that room to develop without, the intensity of a whole city looking at you, or half a city, as in Glasgow, looking at you and saying, oh, you've been touted since you were this, and now look. And it might take the guys a little bit longer. You look at, for example, John Fleck is now taking a long, long time to break into that kind of Scotland setup on a regular basis. And he was a player that was heralded as the Scottish Wayne Rooney back in the day. And
when he was 15, he was getting called the Scottish Wayne Rooney. How can that not go to your head?
Exactly, and I think that's a big challenge, So if you look at guys that maybe, like the guys that are out of the spotlight here, playing football, playing soccer, it's like, they don't have that pressure to deliver every single day, like, somebody's life depends on it. They've got time to grow, and I think honestly, you're seeing the benefit of that if you look at the US national team, how young the squad is, how kind of vibrant the squad is with the players involved, and the levels that they're playing at in Germany and in England and in Europe as a whole, basically. I think you'll notice that, and you can almost include Alphonso Davies in that. Although he's Canadian, he grew up playing in the MLS, and now he's, possibly arguably the best left back in Europe and the world. So
behind Borna Barisic.
Behind Borna Barisic, of course, yeah, well corrected. That's the argument. But he, they grow up and they play in this environment without necessarily the pressure of a city looking at them all the time. And I think that's maybe a big factor. Again, it's only speculation from me, but certainly in my experience looking at the boys playing in our first team that are at a high level, the humility is the one big thing that stands out amongst those.
Well, that's an interesting insight. Maybe just give Davey and McCallum a text and let them know. Just keep an eye out for that at Rangers so we can get a few more boys coming through. Well, Calum, just before I let you go, I'm going to put you on the spot. Realistically, and don't just play to the galleries of the Rangers fans listening, Jim, we'll do it this year, Jim. We'll get 55.
I think so. I mean, I don't want to get too optimistic because I've been burned before, but I just look at a combination of what's going on at Rangers and what's going on, and inevitably it comes down to what's going on across the road as well, across the city. I think that combination is right now the perfect storm for us to go on and do something. And I mean, touch wood, we don't have to necessarily rely on, if we keep the squad fit, because I think we've shown that we've got a real squad depth here that's the best I've seen since maybe 2009, 10, around that time. It's frightening that we can just drop players in and out and still keep everything going in the right direction. I hope we win the league, because my wife's actually expecting on May 16th, 2021. So that ties in nicely with James Tavernier lifting the trophy on the same day. So I'm hoping that it will be a nice double for me that day. But yeah, so yeah, I think I'm fully confident we can do it. Yeah.
I'm glad. Well, I hope I'll be some part of your 55 and a new baby, Sinclair. So here's hoping that comes around, mate. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Callum, I hope the listeners enjoyed that as much as I did. Thanks again for coming on, and Thanksgiving of all days.
Aye, absolutely. No, pleasure to talk Rangers, and obviously with the game tonight as well. It's a good way to spend Thanksgiving.
Perfect, and thank you all for listening. Take care.